Hi, and this is a video Q&A from some of the questions that you guys have asked for Module 1. So here's the first question. Can you explain the difference between skills, which seem to fit into the strengths category, and passions, which fit into the passions category? I have always viewed calligraphy as a passion of mine, which it is, but at the same time, I believe I have a talent or skill for that art form. So I'm confused about not following my passion, which is calligraphy, and instead following my strengths, which have been identified as developer, empathy, learner, positivity, and responsibility. Great question, and I've got a couple of resources for you on this. In today's day and age, we have really bought into, especially as creative entrepreneurs, we've really bought into this concept that we need to follow our passions. Steve Jobs was one of the spearheaders of that movement when he made a commencement speech at a university graduation a few years ago. The problem with following our passions is this. In business, if we want someone to value our products and services, we need them to consider us experts. Being considered as an expert in your field is one of the things that's going to strengthen your brand and help you be a good guide in the area of the product or service that you're selling. Following your passions does not necessarily position you as an expert or a guide in your field simply because you don't have enough expertise or knowledge to be an expert in that area yet. There's a guy named Cal Newport, and after this question was asked, we went back to Module 1 and linked this video in there for you to see. Cal Newport has a talk that he gives about Steve Jobs, and he talks about how Steve said follow his passions, that Steve Jobs actually followed his knowledge and his strength and his expertise, and eventually the passions and the interest in what he did grew. So I highly recommend taking a minute and watching that Cal Newport video. Another thing I want to point out about this is that to be considered an expert in any field, Malcolm Gladwell says in his book Outliers that you need to invest 10,000 hours into practicing that activity before you can be considered an expert. So if your calligraphy is passion, that's great. But can you really build a business off of calligraphy just because it's an interest? Or do you need to spend more time turning that interest into something that is a strength and is a skill? Do you need to practice that a little bit more before you actually start selling it or try to sell it? So what I would advise you is this. Follow your strengths and skills, and then see how you can merge in your passions and your interest of calligraphy. If you would like to actually post this question over in the forums with your skills your strengths listed, it would be a great place for all of us to engage as a group to maybe help you figure out how your strengths and skills can tie into your existing calligraphy business. But great question, thanks for asking. I'll move on to the next one now. So here's our next question. What are the best ways to delegate our weaknesses when we are not capable of hiring? I'm just starting out. I have asked friends for free help, but that feels a little chaotic and unprofessional. Would love to know your thoughts. So I definitely agree. I think asking people to work for free is a little bit unprofessional. I have asked, on a personal note, I have asked my family to help for free. My parents are definitely a go-to resource for me on that, but I won't ask siblings or other family members, cousins or anything like that to help for free. What I would recommend doing when you're starting out is a couple of things. The first thing that you can do is barter. So figure out what type of service that you can provide to other creative entrepreneurs, and then see if they're willing to work with you in exchange for something like that. I still barter with a lot of friends for their services, and I'll do business consulting in exchange for having someone, help me with a series of photos or something like that. The second thing that I want to encourage you to do is price shop. I'm always a little bit scared to tell someone that I got a better price someplace else, but it really is important for you to ask around and see if you can get the best price. On that note, another thing that I would caution you on is when you have revenue to pay people, don't continue to price shop, really value shop then. Make sure that you're paying for the kind of service that you want and that you're getting the results that you want and that you're not being overbilled for something. I do think that there is a certain you get what you pay for thing in business, and so definitely make sure that the prices that you're paying for the services that you need correlate with the results that that service provider is giving you. I do know also that where there's a will, there's a way. And both of my successful businesses were bootstraps. And I started from ground zero and figured out how to get money in the door and pay people to help do things. And another thing that I did was I learned how to do a lot of it on my own first, simply because I didn't have the money to hire a bookkeeper. So it was necessary for me to learn how to invoice and use QuickBooks and things like that. So definitely don't be afraid to learn it. That's gonna serve you very well in the long term. Don't be afraid to barter and ask people to exchange for services, and don't be afraid to price shop. So those are the 3 recommendations I'd give you on that one. Okay, so next question. My vision for my business and life does not seem to be aligning. My vision for my life is focusing on family, while my vision for my business seems to focus on my customers and building my business. What do you do when nothing seems to align? I want my family to be my focus, yet in order for me to reach my vision of my business, I must invest time, which takes away from my family. So, great question. The first thing I would want to tell you about feeling out of alignment is that it really is all about balance, and balance is about focus and being present. So one thing I would encourage you on this is when you're with your family, be with your family. Give them the best of what you have. Turn off your phone, put away your computer, and don't try to do 2 things at one time. I personally notice a better balance in my life whenever I'm around my kids. If I don't do I'm not even thinking about work. It just doesn't work to merge the 2. The second thing I would encourage you in is try to communicate your family what you're trying to do. Get them on board with the project. If you're just starting out, business might take a few extra hours. But communicate to them what you're trying to do, and then give them an opportunity to understand when they're going to have you back. When are things going to slow down a little bit and you're going to be able to go spend more time with them like you want to. The final thing I want to tell you or suggest about this is going through a little activity. I'm going to call it time accounting. So because you want your family to be your focus, start by taking a look at all the activities and all the things that you need to do for your family and with your family. Figure out how much time each of those activities is going to take and total that number of hours. Then take a step back and look at your week. How many available family and work hours do you have available? Let's say you have 40 hours worth of family activities per week, but you estimate that you have about 60 available work family hours in which to accomplish those activities. Subtract 40 from 60 and you have 20 hours left. That 20 hours can be your work time. Now what you've done by going through this activity is you've put your family first. You've said, I have a limited amount of time every week, but I'm going to put my family first, and I'm going to take the time that I need to focus on them, and I'm going to put that into my schedule first. 20 hours remaining to do your work activities may not sound like a lot, but simply by going through this process and organizing your time, you might get more done during those 20 hours, and you've accomplished what you want to do by putting your family first. So hopefully that helps. So our next question is, can you give a list of all the books that you will recommend during the course so I can order them all at once? Great question. And I would actually recommend, I talk about books a lot. So I'll definitely bring up some books during these live Q&A sessions, and I'm not exactly sure what those books will be yet. I would tell you that the only book that we recommend for the course is StrengthsFinder, and there's actually a free online assessment that you can use in lieu of that. So I would wait till the end of the course to order all the books. We will also be starting a thread over in the forums of book recommendations, and I'm really excited. You guys can contribute there, and I'm excited to see what books people have read, and I'll be sure to list all my favorites as they come up in conversation there as well. So our next question is really simple. Can you give us another example of the difference between values and principles? Absolutely. And to do this, I actually want to read you a story that Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, used to use to illustrate the difference between values and principles. It was a dark and stormy night. Crew member says, "Captain, Captain, wake up." The captain of the ship says, "Well?" The crew member says, "Sorry to wake you, sir, but we have a serious problem." The captain says, "What is it?" The crew member says, "There's a ship in our sea lane about 20 miles away, and they refuse to move." The captain says, "What do you mean they refuse to move? Just tell them to move." The crew member says, "Sir, we've told them. They will not move." The captain says, "I'll tell them." The signal goes out, "Move starboard 20 degrees. The returning signal says, "Move starboard yourself 20 degrees. The captain says, "I can't believe this. I'm a captain. Tell them who I am. I'm important." The signal goes out, "This is Captain Horatio Hornblower the 15th, commanding you to move starboard 20 degrees at once." The signal returns, "This is Seaman Carl Jones II, commanding you to move starboard 20 degrees at once." The captain says, "What arrogance, what presumption. Here is a seaman commanding me, the captain. We could just blow them right out of the water. We could just let them know who we are." The signal says, "This is the mighty Missouri, flagship of the 7th Fleet." And the signal returns from the seaman, "This is the lighthouse." Now, Stephen Covey talks about this being a true story, and the lighthouse is the best example of principles. A lighthouse cannot move for a ship, and principles are natural laws that govern the consequences of our actions and our behavior. Principles are things that do not change. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey actually talks about 7 principles. He calls them habits, but they are natural laws that he saw happening in the lives of people around him who were effective. One of those examples is seek first to understand and then be understood. Stephen Covey determined from his research that the principle of seeking first to understand got people further in life than if they sought to be understood or sought to make themselves known. So values drive behavior, which is why we focus on them so much in Module 1 of the course. If we want to change the results that we're getting in life, we need to change our actions. And our actions are driven by our beliefs or our values. So we need to change what we believe or what we value or what we exhibit that we value in life if we want to change the results that we're getting. And we're all about change, so understanding how our values drive our behavior is really important. On the other hand, principles drive the consequences of behavior. Principles are important to understand, but they're not necessarily things that we can change because they're natural laws. Stephen Covey says this, "I may want to impress you in a particular way or sell something to you, but if I don't talk straight and tell you the truth, and you know that, the natural consequence is that you will not trust me." So being truthful and being honest is a principle. And when you're truthful and honest, people learn to trust you. And when you lie and deceive people, they learn to distrust you. And that's just an example of a principle and the difference between that and a value. Let me know if you have any more questions on that, because I know it can be a really sticky topic. Next question. Is there a formula for looking at your strengths and determining if the business you already have is the best fit for your strengths, or how to best maximize your business strategy in coordination with your strengths? Yes, there is, and that's what we're going to talk about in Module 2. Just to give you a little preview, in Module 2, we're going to take an assessment of your personality using some of the information that we've discovered in Module 1, and we're going to help you figure out what business activities you most enjoy. And we're going to contrast that with different types of business models that you could build and run. And we're going to give you 12 entrepreneurial archetypes. And when you look at these archetypes, you're going to be able to figure out which one you relate to best. And I hope that's going to give you a lot of clarity on the type of business you need to be building. So wait for that. It's going to be really good. Okay, our next question is very simple. How do you stay motivated during a course like this? I totally understand you when you say that. Anytime I start a course, the motivation is really high at the very beginning of the course, and I feel like I sort of taper off towards the end. So what I would encourage you to do is figure out what you can commit to every week. Can you commit to 10 minutes a day? That's great. Can you commit to every Sunday night sitting down and looking at the course content for 30 minutes? Just commit to something every week, because if you will start, the content in the course will engage you and it'll make you want to finish it. I've designed all of these worksheets to really draw you in and give you some things to think about. The other thing that you can do is on the worksheets, we're incorporating little spots for action items so that as you make notes about the course content, like if you think, oh, I should buy that book and read that, or I need to call so-and-so and book an appointment for thus and such, you can write that in your action items spot. That's another great tool and resource for you to use after the course is over. So you can flip back to your notes, look at your action items, transfer them to your planner if you want to. But that spot on the worksheets for action items is to help you make sure that you're really executing on the ideas that you're picking up in the course. Okay, so our next question is, how long will we have access to the videos and worksheets after the course is over? And how we're building this course is that you'll have indefinite access to the videos and the content. The only time the videos and the content will go away is right before we relaunch a new course, but we'll give you a heads up to let you know so that you can finish out any of the content that you're currently working on before we launch the new course. So you get lifetime access. We'll keep you posted on new additions that we add, new content that we add, and going through the course after we relaunch it next time is also a great time to re-engage with the content, look at your business in a different light, and even learn a little bit more from new people that you'll meet in the forums at that time. So our next question is a kind of a serious one, I'd say. After working through Module 1, I'm having some serious thoughts about completely changing my business. I run a successful business that has comfortably provided for our family for several years now, but I don't feel like I'm using my strengths or fulfilling my purpose with this business. The thought of starting over is scary, and I don't want to put my family in a bad situation just because I have a good idea for another business that would allow me to operate more in my brilliance zone and align more with my values. Do you have any advice on how to know if it's time to move on and start something new? And how do you make such a big transition? So, very serious question, because I actually wouldn't advise anyone to start over again or kill a successful business. Another book that we can talk about in the course and that I recommend is by a guy named Michael Gerber, and it's called The E-Myth. E stands for entrepreneurial myth. Now, in the E-Myth, Michael Gerber talks about a way to build a successful business, and he defines a successful business as something that runs without you. So to the person asking this question, I would say if you have a successful business, the thing that you need to do next is see to it that the systems and the operations are in place to help that business run without you. If you can do that, if you can set up managers in the business or administrators or accountants or bookkeepers, and if you can put the processes in place that enable you to walk away from that business, I would tell you to keep that current stream of revenue there and alive, and then go start something supporting your strengths and your values. The only time I would ever tell you to kill a business that doesn't support your strengths and your values is if that business itself is failing in the first place. Now, this is a very serious question, so I don't want to just blanket answer this. I would encourage you to ask more questions about this in the forums so that we can gather some more information. If I was consulting the person who asked this question one-on-one, I would have a lot more questions, just starting with what type of business is it, how many employees do you have, how long have you been in business, are you a local business, an online business, what type of business model are we talking about here? So there's a lot more information I think I would like to know about it before I would say kill a successful business. Something else that you might be able to do would be to figure out how you can incorporate your values into your current business. And that's something that we can chat about with you over in the forums. But great question. Thank you so much for asking that. Okay, so our last question for the day is this. I've heard a number of people say, if you love what you do, don't open your own business because you'll end up spending a lot of time doing paperwork and you'll lose the whole concept of why you decided to create your brand, your company, etc. I personally think that this doesn't have to be the case. What's your experience with this comment, and what is your recommendation to not lose our goals and or concept? So there are a couple things that I would tell you on this. And the first one is, your friends and family are probably never going to really understand what it is you do, and they may not even understand why you do it. Unless they relate to your company's mission from the standpoint of a consumer or a client, they're probably not going to understand the people who do understand your mission and purpose as a company and therefore want to buy your product or service. So about the comment in general, I would tell you to not be discouraged. Now, for sort of a reality check, I would also tell you that there is a lot of paperwork to be done in a business, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of that in Module 2. But what I would encourage you on that is you don't have to do that paperwork yourself. There are plenty of people who have made careers out of filling out forms for entrepreneurs. And these people are executive assistants, virtual assistants, bookkeepers, CPAs, people like that. Find the people who love to do the paperwork and let them do it for you. That'll make them happy. It'll make your business successful. And the last thing that I would tell you to do about staying on course or staying on mission is to, in this module, really take a look at that purpose statement and that purpose exercise and try to get a consolidated mission or purpose statement written. Type that out, write it out, have it hand calligraphied or hand lettered, and post it above your desk so that it's someplace where you can look at it every day and read it, and something that can remind you why you're doing what you're doing. So just stay really focused on that why, and I think you'll be in really good shape to not lose your focus for why you do what you do. And that concludes all the questions that we received for the Q&A on the first module. If you have any more, don't forget to use the link to the questions form that we have provided at the bottom of every module. And thanks so much for listening today.